So yes, my name is Pietari Pa, another short and easy Finnish name. I know. Leading the admin team at Supercell, so meaning anything related to offices, facilities, people, all sorts of special projects, as well as the one that I'm now going to share with you. But let's start with a brief video.
Today, 1 in 3 people in the world are playing video games. It's an entertainment industry that knows no bounds. From young to old, from Brazil to Bangladesh, everyone is playing. Now, the video game industry wants to play their part in the biggest challenge of our time. Keep our planet beautiful and level up in the battle against climate change. To help the UN achieve the global goals by forming a new alliance for action. We have no time to lose. The future lies in our hands. Together, we can all play for the planet.
So yeah, this was a clip that was first shown just last week on Monday at the UN Climate Summit as part of the Playing for the Planet initiative that many of you might be already familiar about. And that has a lot of both Finnish but international gaming companies involved. And the idea, of course, is to play for our planet and really to do something for Mother Earth. But this presentation today is all about how Supercell became carbon negative and how you could potentially do the same if you have the will. And it's going to be pretty practical. I'm just going through like step-by-step process on how we actually did it to make it like really, really simple to grasp. First of all, why? Well, I guess like saving the planet Earth doesn't need a lot of like excuses or explanations why this is important. But how we actually sort of like came up with this, of course, has been sort of like a process of years and years. So employees, of course, they have been asking us as a company like for years already, whether we are offsetting our business flights or whether we have plans to do that. How about the green office things? How about the plastic water bottles? All kinds of things that are evolving around that. And thinking of it, we of course were always thinking that we are, as a company, like still a really, really small one compared to all the big players in the world. We're just like 300 people, and that's globally, only 200 in Finland. So yeah, we are small, but in any case, we do also travel a lot, so sure, that makes some sense. And of course, yeah, we do have hundreds of millions of players, so maybe there would be a chance to really sort of like make a much bigger impact through the players or through the whole industry. So yeah, that's why and when we did the commitment. So early this year, after all these discussions with the employees and with the leadership, we decided to make a commitment to become totally carbon neutral during 2019. And that's also it was in the beginning of this year that we also made it sort of like semi-public by Ilkka writing a blog posting about our will to do that. And later this year, as part of the UN Climate Summit, we also did sort of like a further commitment or pledge to not only compensate all of our own carbon emissions, but also those caused by our players playing some billions of hours of our games every year. We also did an additional pledge to help other companies to do the same, and that's why, of course, I'm sharing all this with you as well. So that was the first step, and the second step that, to be honest, we first sort of like skipped, because we just went right into digging the figures and doing the calculations and things. But later on learned that maybe it would be wise to actually look at the greenhouse gas categories and figure out what are actually meaningful for us as a gaming company. So there are several of those and really easy to access online as well. These might also sort of like those categories that are relevant to you as a company might vary a bit, like depending on which kind of games you're doing and what kind of company you are. So you might have a lot of sort of like licensing business that evolves around physical products. Well, your distribution channel might be different than ours on mobile side, so that might also meet something a bit different kind of categories than what we are using. And by the way, don't worry, we're planning to make this all like very much open source and public, so no need to try to figure out what those categories actually are and whether those would be relevant to us as well. After this, we got to the sort of like first, more difficult part, and that was really the gathering data phase. To be honest, this was like definitely the most time-consuming phase for us as a company. So gathering data like really means to go after all your partners, your internal different departments, and try to get the data that you would actually need to make the calculations on the CO2 emissions. So we internally, of course, we went to IT, checked sort of like the purchases they have been doing during the year. Of course, sort of like the internal servers as well. From the admin and finance, we did some figures on commuting, postal services, other kinds of purchases. And then, of course, internal tech services gave us the number of hours people play our games yearly. Some companies, we know, they're using like DAUs or MAUs to do the same calculations. We went after the actual hours that people spend actively playing our games. And from some external partners, we got the data for business traveling, and of course AWS, which plays a big part in our business. And from the landlords, we get some electricity usage figures, as well as some office waste production figures. And of course, this is not sort of like an exact science. So we had to make some assumptions as well. But after all, we got these figures, and we started to crunch the numbers. So this step is definitely sort of like the most controversial one, because as said, it's not an exact science. There's like a lot of ways to do the calculations on even from the flight side or other like business commuting side, even though those are sort of like the most simple ones if we compare to, for example, the players charging their mobile devices to be able to play our games. So keep in mind when you're doing this that no matter what you will be doing, there's definitely someone that can say that, no, this is wrong, or no, you should have done it this way, or no, you didn't take into account the geographical locations of your players during this time of year when it's actually consuming more than this time of year, and so on. But yeah, we just simply took out our calculators and went through these different categories. So, of course, some figures we just got directly from our service providers, so travel agencies, hosting service providers, and well, to be honest, we just have to trust them. We cannot really get the whole visibility in all of the figures. We just need to trust them that it's the right figure, and yeah, they have the good sort of like ideas behind those. And for office and electricity, as well as a lot of like purchases related stuff, there's a bunch of calculators online. Citra.fi is a pretty good tool, in addition to Google, of course, to sort of like find those. And of course, we, other gaming companies that have already done it, we're really happy to help with those ones. And the end user side, so yeah, we were looking at the different like research publications and getting the references for mobile energy usage in active play mode, especially. Then we did the step 5, so the validation. So we wanted to sort of like make sure that even though there's always some controversiality around the figures and the calculations, at least we would feel somehow safe to be able to share these things with you, for example. To be honest, as a if I would be representing a smaller game developer, this is the phase that I would probably skip. If you're not looking for any sort of like real certification or some stamp on any papers, we're not looking for that, but still. I would maybe skip that, save the couple of thousands of dollars, euros this might cost you, and just sort of like put that to some extra offsetting. Better use of money. And now that there's plenty of people that have already done this, they might be able to help you with the validations. Then we did the actual offsetting side of things. So after crunching the numbers and getting the validation, we were looking for sort of like a right partner to help us to do the offsetting side of things. We decided to go with a company called South Pole, which is one of the leading service providers in offsetting globally. We also sort of like consulted them, but also the other third-party service provider called Gaia Consulting here in Helsinki, and came up with the project mix that looks like 75% forest protection and 25% planting new trees. The idea behind this is that we want to have we really want to get the biggest impact possible for our money and for our offsetting, but also avoid sort of like unnecessarily large risks. And there's like different risk factors with different ways or different sort of like project mixes. And the total offsetting we then done was roughly 40,000 CO2 metric tons. Our cost was around 8 euros per CO2 ton. And there's also around that, there's like plenty of different kind of tools and offsetting, and that's like one of the things that makes this really, really hard. You can look after offsetting for 0.5 US dollars per CO2 ton, or then 50 US dollars. So there's a big variety of that. And if interested, those projects that we actually supported were in both in Latin America and in Africa. Then, of course, the most interesting part is going to the future and thinking sort of like big. What could we do other than this? And that's of course sort of like thinking about making a bigger impact through sort of like other companies, so sharing the knowledge, helping others to do the same. But then of course, thinking of our players and the hundreds of millions of people that are playing our games. So, of course, there's a lot of in-game charity-related things that can be done, and we have been doing previously. But there's something sort of like even like more creative ways that we could maybe help to really, really make the change. It's raising awareness like through in-game events or things. Like think of a racing game where like unlocking the Tesla is like more wow than unlocking the Ferrari, or rather serving vegan burgers inside some game than like some beef and bacon ones. And there's plenty of that kind of examples. What if we would be planting trees instead of cutting those down in all building games? But yeah, that's of course totally up to the game developers themselves, and we as a company, of course, couldn't like do that kind of like commitments to do those in game. That's something to think about, food for thoughts, maybe. Thank you.